Madlab Performance presents The Lab Podcast. Here's your host and chief mad scientist, Dan Gilbert.
Hello and welcome everybody to The Lab. I'm here joined, of course, by Luke, blood, sweat, respect, Hillman.
As always.
And Josh, lead trainer and always the smartest guy in the room because he is a Kruhm, Josh Kruhm.
How's it going, everybody?
And we have a special guest today, which I'm really excited about. A professional obstacle course racing athlete, sponsored, Adam Lovellette.
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me on.
And I said your last name correct?
You did.
Oh, man, I'm getting so good at this. Adam, take us through obstacle course racing, fast-growing sport. How did you start?
So I got into the sport when I was pretty young. I was
like 4 or 5 years old?
Not that young.
Okay.
I wish I had that much time into it. But I started out in my sophomore year of high school. I was actually doing cross country, and I started that because I was transitioning from baseball to cross country because I realized
natural transition.
Well, yeah, you know, those two things go hand in hand. You're running from home base to first base, running 3 miles. It's the same distance. But I realized I hated baseball, so I was like, this isn't really for me anymore. And then my school was having cross country as a new sport my sophomore year, and I was telling my mom, I was like, hey, well, they have this new sport. My friend wants me to do it. Should I do it? And she was like, you don't run. That's not your thing. And I was like, well, now it is. It is now. It's my thing now.
Take that, Mom.
And then I started doing that, and I did a whole season of that. And then my cross country coach was the one who actually got me into obstacle course racing. So he saw that I really had a passion for running and that I really liked pushing myself. And then he was like, hey, listen, I've got these races that I like to do. I was wondering if you wanted to join me and do them with me because I think you would really like it. So we went out and did my first one June of 2016 in New York. And we went up there, and ever since then, it's really just been a passion of mine, and it's just become my life.
The first one was all the way in New York?
Yep, up in Tuxedo.
What was that? What was that thought process like where he goes, hey, there's these really difficult races where there's a lot going on and you have to climb over stuff. Like, how much of an explanation did you get? Did you research any of it beforehand, or were you just like, I'll just do it?
I got no explanation, did no research. He was like, you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? What could go wrong?
Yeah, man, just ready to go. Just ready to be challenged.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What was the first race?
It was a sprint. It was 3 miles long, and it was up in New York, like I said, but it was beautiful weather. It was obstacles, like normal standard obstacles that you usually see. It was a Spartan race as well.
What's normal? We don't know a whole lot about it. You know, we researched our own, and we even thought about creating an obstacle course at one point. But what's some standard obstacles that you encounter in most of these races?
Well, it's really based on military style training. When in the military, you go through these kinds of obstacle course races as well. So they take a lot of stuff from there. So some things like just jumping over walls, they range anywhere from 4 feet to 10 feet. Rope climbs, like heavy bucket and sandbag carries. Certain races do have specialty obstacles as well. Like the Spartan race, they have the spear throw, which is where you throw a spear into like a hay bale.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, and then Tough Mudder has a lot of different team-focused obstacles you have to do together. Things like where you have to actually help one another in order to accomplish certain obstacles because you physically can't do them by yourself. And then there are other companies like Bone Frog that really do exactly what they do in the military. So it's the exact same thing because it's based on military training. So just stuff like that. But I mean, every race does it a little bit differently.
So you do your first race, New York 2016. How many races have you done now?
I'm probably anywhere between maybe 40 and 60 races overall.
Light work.
Yeah, not many races.
Jeez, man. And what was the point where you decided that this was for you?
After the first race, really, that was it. And for me, it really got instilled into me that I really wanted to do this because I did that first race and I really didn't do very good. I was struggling a lot on some of the more strength-based obstacles, maybe carrying a bucket or doing a 400-pound tire flip or running with a sandbag. I really struggled with those things, or even things that I'm really proficient in now, like the rope climb, couldn't do it. There was no part of me that was ever going to be able to do that at that point, and I was just like, you know what? I actually want to get better at these things, and I actually want to become someone who can actually accomplish these things. And I hadn't thought about doing it professionally or competitively at any point at that time. It was just something that I thought I could challenge myself to become, just a healthier and more athletic person.
So then what made you switch to going, oh, I definitely want to do this. This is cool, to, oh, wow, I am good at this. I want to compete at a higher level?
I'd say it was in 2018. I did a Savage race, and that was, again, only 3 miles. It was the only race really I could do that summer before I went off to college. It was in 2018, and I just did like a regular heat. I didn't do it competitively, and I just wanted to go out there and see how fast I could do it. And I was just like, maybe I'll just do it. I did that, and I placed in first for overall for the non-competitive heat, and I was like, maybe I should try doing this competitively. So then I signed up for my first competitive race in November at the World Championships for Spartan Racing in Greece, because I was there for college.
That's quite a step up.
Yeah.
No small steps for Adam here.
No, never. But I did that, and then I raced twice on Saturday and then once on Sunday. And the 2 races on Saturday.
Wait. So in that weekend, you did multiple races. You weren't going up for one race.
That is correct, yes.
How long were the races on Saturday?
So Saturday morning was 8 to 10 miles. I can't remember the
quick
distance.
8 to 10 miles without schools, okay.
And then Saturday afternoon was 3 to 5. I can't remember the distance exactly, but that's like roughly within. So we'll say 4. We'll say 4 for Saturday afternoon. And then the one on Sunday was actually 18 miles.
Oh my goodness. And you knew this going in?
Well, I didn't know the distance going in.
You didn't know any of the distances going in?
Well, they told me the distance, but they lied.
So tell me how this gets. How does this get set? Like, why? How do you get to end up in Greece? Like, obviously you're looking for something competitive, but like, who'd you talk to? What was the conversation like?
Well, I was in Greece already for college, and so I took my first semester in Greece, and I did like study abroad there, which is like super weird for a college student in general.
Yeah,
but I did that, and then
probably was amazing though.
It was super cheap. Well,
that's helpful.
Yeah, and then I was looking for races because I usually race a lot in the fall, like even before I did competitive, because I just like to do them with friends and family and stuff like that. So I usually do them in the fall, but I was away, so I didn't really know where any races were. I wasn't really familiar with any of the locations, and I found that there was a race in Greece, and I was like, oh, sure, maybe I'll do that. And then I thought already that I want to start doing these competitively, so I went out and just wanted to see how I stacked up against the competition, or just in general, like how fast I could do it. And then Sunday was the race that I actually placed at, and I placed 3rd overall.
But how long did they tell you were going to run? Like, I guess you talked to some coordinators or something when you were entering?
Well, when you enter the race, they always have like standard information. They're like, okay, well, the shorter races are 3 to 5 miles. The like kind of the middle races or the medium races are 8 to 10 miles. And then they always say that the longest races are about 13 miles. But those are never true. Like, I have not... Well, this year, they're actually standardizing the distances. So all the distances are going to be the same. But before this year, everything was just kind of like, we'll find out when you're out there.
Oh, my goodness. Did the other students think you were crazy?
Yes. It was super weird, actually, because when I went to college, I remember talking to one of the coordinators there, and he was saying, like, oh, like, we have this, like, marathon that we do in Greece, which happened to be the same weekend that I was racing, so it kind of was like, I can't do that.
Right.
But he was saying, like, oh,
I'm doing something harder, guys.
But he was just trying to get me to do it, and we started talking, and he was like, oh, like, do you run stuff like that? And I was like, yeah, I do, like, ultra marathons and stuff like that. And he was like, what's an ultra marathon? So I explained to him, and for those of you that don't know, an ultra marathon is any running distance that is over the standard marathon. So it's like 30 miles, 50 miles, 70 miles, 100 miles. So I was talking to him about that.
You're going to give Luke a heart attack over here.
But I was talking to him about that. And
Luke's
then
like, I don't run more than 15
I'm already going in cardiac arrest.
But we were talking about that. And then the first day of orientation, they had us all in this giant room. And they were like, he was like, oh, where's my ultra runner at? I'm like, oh, me. And then after that, pretty much everyone just thought I was crazy for the whole rest of the year. Everyone was like, oh, that's that crazy kid that runs for an absurd amount of time.
That's awesome, though. That's really cool. So you started becoming competitive in Greece. What did you start to do after you placed 3rd in that Sunday race? What do you start doing differently? Like, how does your mindset change, and like, how do you approach the sport differently? Or did you?
Well, I definitely started to look into how to train properly, because I had done some training with trainers before, but not very much. I was just kind of like going off of like word of mouth, like stuff you see on Instagram. So that was like all terrible.
Right.
It's a good resource.
Yeah, Instagram workouts. We've
Yeah,
talked about that
Instagram. I
many
mean,
times.
you know, abs in 6 days.
That's it.
100%.
But you know, I started actually like working with people and actually doing my own research and trying to look into ways that I could be better. Talking to people who were like had notoriety or notoriety. That's the word. Notoriety in the sport.
Very well done.
But just so I could get like their kind of take on it and see like, okay, how are you training versus how am I training? What should I focus on? And then looking at things that I was lacking in. So I knew that I was lacking a lot of strength in the ability to do some of the heavier carries and be able to run with them. So like you get like a 60 or 70 pound sandbag and you have to run like a quarter mile with it. I really struggle with that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people really struggle with that.
So trying to get stronger in that aspect was really helpful for me. So I really just focused on my deficiencies and then tried to kind of build those up while also just trying to get more knowledgeable on like the fitness industry and how to train properly and like the importance of stretching and nutrition.
What kind of stuff did you do? Like what kind of stuff did you change to in like your lifts?
I definitely started doing more compound lifts overall. I started trying to increase the weight instead of going for the reps because obviously like what I noticed is like to get stronger, you have to actually lift heavier weights.
Thank you.
But so like
It's amazing how that works.
I know, right? It's crazy. But I was always doing high reps and stuff like that because I was an endurance athlete, and I was like, oh, endurance. That
But you
means
already get enough volume from your
exactly. So I just started doing more heavier lifts and that has helped me a lot actually.
Oh, that's really cool.
Now, have you done anything with Josh? Has Josh helped you out at all?
Yeah, he has actually. So for those of you that don't know, that Josh is actually my cousin. So
we should have introduced that one.
yeah, we
Yep,
probably
my
should.
fault.
It's all right. It's all right.
Surprise.
His entire life.
So I've worked with Josh before. Before he was at Madlab, actually, I used to work with him a little bit, and the big thing that he actually helped me with was mobility and stretching, which was the thing that I lacked a lot in because I used to get so many injuries. Like,
Oh yeah, you
I
definitely
think
would.
he's
with
helped
those
all
ones.
of us to a point.
That's
with
true. He's really trained all of us at this point.
He's helped us all.
Josh is the glue that keeps us
Yeah,
together.
It really
yeah.
is.
But I had a plethora of injuries very early on. I mean, I had shin splints and jumper's knee and ITBS, so
So a lot
ITBS
of
syndrome.
you had a lot of overuse injuries.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had
And
several voodoo floss sessions.
yes,
Oh, I bet those are comfortable.
but
Do you want to explain voodoo floss really fast?
So voodoo floss is just a compression band that you put around the tight muscle, and then you do myofascial release through it, and it just kind of helps it along a little bit.
it's horrible.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. I know.
But
Josh actually introduced me to it in
Yeah.
a very difficult way.
He did it on my calf and forearm, and it was brutal. It was right.
He did my forearm the first time
Yeah.
ever, and then I got my calf done.
yeah,
Actually,
calves are the worst
yes,
for me. At least.
100% with anything. Have you ever
Yeah.
been dry needled?
Oh no, I don't know.
Oh,
I can't do
Lord.
needles. Needles aren't my thing.
Dry needling in the calf is one of the most painful experiences.
It's the only time
that
I've
you
ever
can
heard Dan scream.
I actually yelled out when we were at rehab to perform. Actually, and one of them was needling my calf after an ACL surgery. Helped tremendously. But I don't make noise whenever I'm in pain or anything. And I literally was on a table in a doctor's office. Everybody's quiet, and I just go, "Oh!" And I was like, and in my head, I'm like, "Did you just make a noise?" I was like, "Oh my goodness!"
It must really be painful.
It's interesting. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't even like stretching my calves.
Yeah. Although you feel so much better.
Oh,
afterwards.
so much better. But yeah, I mean, Josh and like the work he put in for me and like mobility and stretching really helped me because like the injuries, like I've never had an injury where it actually knocked me out of the season before, where like I couldn't race the whole season, but like it would knock me out for a few weeks or a few months, and it would just make I have to decrease my running volume.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like
It affects everything.
yeah. So I mean, I was just like, and that really helped a lot. So now I'm like stretching like crazy. Now I mean, I stretch 7 days a week, do mobility twice a week,
Hey, that's good.
And-
how long do you stretch for?
like 30 minutes.
Okay.
I'll do like 30 minutes of stretching a day, and then I'll do like maybe 45 minutes of mobility twice a week.
Oh man, that's what I need to be doing.
Well, with your sport, it's such a sport of volume and those long, slow gains over time, especially as being a runner. So I imagine taking that time off, having that time like from being injured would really set you back on those plans.
Oh,
And
yeah.
So the longer you can stay in it, the more miles you can put on.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I noticed that when I first actually failed my first race, which was also really enlightening, and I was actually really happy that I failed it. So with that race, I had actually gotten off of an injury, And it was ITBS that I just gotten out of, and I hadn't run.
band.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah,
but I had been out now from running for 2 months, and I was about to go run a 100-mile race.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, man, that's not good. Like, I had 2 months off, and now I have like a month to like try and get back to the point where I could like get there. And I got about halfway through that race, and I was just like, my legs couldn't handle it.
The 100-mile race was obstacle course, or just
no? That was just
ultramarathon?
running. That was just running. But I have done ultra marathons like that where there are obstacles.
Like what?
So the longest obstacle course race I've done was
Seems insane.
It was 24 hours, and I knocked out about 73 miles.
Oh my good. Wait, you just run 24 hours straight?
Yes, sir.
Are there any breaks?
I took about a 9-minute rest.
Oh, yeah. Well, I thought you took no breaks. 9 minutes out of the 24 hours.
Dude,
Man, you really
Snickers
were
work harder.
sleeping hard.
Nah, no sleep. There's no sleep in that one.
Oh my goodness. Tell me, where was this?
That was in Atlanta, and that was actually this past year, so 2019 in November. And it's surprising how cold Atlanta is in November for being so far south.
I could see. And if it's 24 hours, you have to run, I guess you run overnight?
Oh, yeah. We started at noon on Saturday and ended noon on Sunday.
Little known fact, it gets colder when the sun goes down.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I mean, it's crazy. It was crazy. But that race was probably the most uncomfortable that I've ever been in any race or any situation in my life. Because during the morning,
And what kind of race was it again?
obstacle course race.
But what was the branded?
This was a Tough Mudder. So this is the world's toughest mudder. So this was the world championship of Tough Mudder races. And for some reason, they decided to make it 24 hours, which is so bizarre because all the races for the rest of the year are usually like 8 or 10 miles. But they do have some races that are 12 hours. So you go 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., which are super cool.
They're like, if you are going to be here, you need to show you deserve to be here.
Oh, yeah. You really have to prove yourself to be at the
How many people dropped out?
I really don't even know. They say usually about 50 to 60% of people drop out.
Oh my God. It's almost like it's like SEAL training for fun.
Or like what you see a lot at that race was that people would run, and then as soon as they got too cold, they would stop, and then they wouldn't run again until the sun came up.
I can't blame them. I hate the cold.
But that race was especially cold because not only were we running for 24 hours straight, we were already uncomfortable, but we were consistently in like freezing cold water.
Wait, why are you in water?
Those are the obstacles. Almost all the obstacles they had us do involved them spraying us with freezing cold water.
Get out of here. Wait, so how many obstacles would you say there were?
There were 24 per lap.
So 24 and a 3 mile.
It was a 5-mile lap.
All have to 5 miles.
Yep.
And all of them have to do with water in some way.
All except for, I believe, 3.
Oh my goodness. No wonder you were freezing.
Yep, that's what the wetsuit was helpful.
Oh, you had a wetsuit?
Yes, sir.
Smart guy.
I know. It was horrible.
But it's probably right?
The chafing was unbelievable.
I do believe that.
If you want some tips out there for anyone who's thinking about doing this, try to refrain from peeing in your wetsuit as the race goes on further. So earlier in the race, like probably the first 12 or 14 hours, you can pee in your wetsuit. After that, you could pick and choose your battles.
Wait, why so?
So when you chafe and then you pee on those spots that are chafing, it's like someone has poured gasoline on your body and then lit it on fire.
This is a different sport. This is a completely different techniques here.
And it's not like you can wear.
Don't pee on your wounds. Oh, that's sound advice.
I mean, it is.
Except for jellyfish.
Except for jellyfish. I've never had to do that.
You haven't been attacked that way, right?
No, never been attacked by a jellyfish.
Okay. Any animal attacks?
Bears. Well, not like actually attacked by a bear, but I've come into my fair share of interactions with bears and races before.
One that's frightening, very frightening, and then also. I'm surprised they don't have that as an obstacle at this point with all the things that you've been talking about.
Well, I mean, at the
spear fighting.
If you're at the spear throw, you've got a weapon now.
That's true.
So now that is your new obstacle.
I would not want to face a bear with a spear.
Well, I mean...
As exciting as that sounds.
Well, would you rather do it with a spear or would you rather do it with your hands?
Or a bucket.
I don't know.
I mean...
Dan looks at this.
But that was probably... I've had a lot of bear interactions, just like running, and then you'll see a bear in the distance. I actually had my cross-country coach when he was racing.
The one that got you into it?
Yes.
Okay.
Before I started it, he was doing a race, and he was on a cargo net, And at the top of it, a family of bears came out as soon as he got to the top, and were like crowding around the net. So everybody that was on the net just had to stay there and hide until the bears eventually left.
Maybe they were just cheering them on. Probably not.
I mean, they might have been, but I would not want to go down there and find out.
Bears aside, but let's go back to the Atlanta race because this interested me a lot. I mean, I always thought these races were difficult, but this one sounds like especially heinous, for sure. What's the most difficult obstacle?
It really depends on where you are in the race, because
in that one,
in all races really. So like depending on like just how you're feeling that day, certain obstacles can hit you differently. Like for the 24-hour race, the hardest obstacle was the 10-foot wall.
Because you just have to constantly.
Just that constant, like just pushing your body weight over the top of it and having to jump up there. I mean, it just takes a number on you. Like even the grip strength obstacles, like I can like always get those done pretty much, unless those get a little bit harder as you get later into the night because your hands start to freeze up a little bit.
Yeah.
And everything's wet, so it definitely is a struggle. But the walls really just take a toll on your body as you go further and further and further.
Was everybody wearing a wetsuit in that one?
If you weren't, they weren't racing very long.
So everybody, would you say that everybody that finished that race had a wetsuit on?
100%.
Oh, wow.
Every single person that finished that actually ran the full 24 hours or actually won the race was wearing a wetsuit.
Do you know who the person was that won the race?
I don't know him personally, but I've met him like once.
Famous guy? Like, is it like a big name in OCR racing? Like,
he's a pretty big guy in OCR. I don't know his name off the top of my head though, but he clocked in like 110 miles at that race, maybe 115.
Oh my gosh! How many miles did you do?
I got in about 73.
That's insane, as well. That's just different. Human beings do some wild stuff, for sure. What would you say is your favorite obstacle?
So every race has their own specific ones that I really enjoy. So for Tough Mudder, my favorite one is easily the Block Nest Monster.
We have the Chalk Nest Monster over there.
Yeah, but that one you have to like jump into the water, and you have to do this with a team. I mean, you can do it by yourself, but it's horrid. It's terrible.
Take us through this.
So you have these giant like blocks, and they're probably like maybe your wingspan.
My wingspan?
Oh gosh!
Sorry, just trying to extend my arms, smashing my.
Yeah, so like your wingspan, and they rotate, and the only way to move them is to like go over the top of them. But your body weight obviously will pull it down towards you.
Right.
So you have to jump up while everyone else pushes the block, so that you rotate it over.
That sounds insane.
And then when you get to the other side, you are pushing it down, and then it's just this constant rotation. But as soon as you lose that rotation and that momentum, it just becomes significantly harder. So you have to be working with people.
So are there certain races that are, like, do they say that they're team races versus individual? Or
yeah.
Like, is it like...
So Tough Mudder really focuses on the team aspect. They do obviously do individual competitive races.
Like the one in Atlanta was individual?
That one was individual and competitive. So if you did it competitively, you had to do all the obstacles by yourself, including the one that I just said.
Oh, my goodness.
So it makes it significantly more difficult because you now have to do all these team-based obstacles by yourself.
You just must get some people that are just literally just lay down and they're just like done.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of people just be running and all of a sudden just sit down and they just never get back up. They're just like, I'm done.
But it's like, that is calling the week right
there.
Oh, my goodness.
I've seen a lot of crazy injuries, too, when I've been out there, too. Like, just people
I have no doubt.
Like, I mean, my very first race...
You're lucky you just have gotten overuse injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you could talk about people are probably snapping bones and ligaments and stuff.
That's what happened my very first race in Tuxedo. Within the first mile, there was this woman running in front of us, twisted her ankle on a rock. That was a horrible sound. I was like, oh, man.
That's like your introduction.
That was literally the introduction.
I had a client who
Adam's like, I like this more.
Ruptured his patella tendon on the wall, on one of the walls in Tough Mudder.
I remember the guy that you're talking about, actually, yeah.
But that happens a lot. I mean, I've seen people like with just fracturing bones, tearing ligaments, like... I've seen people like break their arms and stuff like that, falling off the walls. A lot of it's just carelessness.
Yeah.
Like people who just aren't like, if you're not focused in those situations and in these races, the odds of you getting hurt are higher. Like
for sure.
Because you really have to focus because a lot of the terrain is very technical. So you have to make sure you're watching where your foot placement, make sure you're looking at like where people are running. You can see where the ground is more
But
matted.
that becomes so difficult under exhaustion from not only just the length of the race, but also sometimes the conditions you're in.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's such a mentally. Do you do anything for like do you do anything mentally to prepare for the sport? Like, do you do any like meditation or like some kind of mindfulness, or like do you do anything like that?
No, I never got in. I did try meditation, but I have a lot of energy, so I could never really like sit
monkey
still.
brain.
But what I do for me is I'll do long runs without headphones. So I will
Actually, you said this. You talked to me about this earlier when we spoke, and I did that. I just did that on Saturday, and it's hard.
Oh yeah,
it is difficult.
It's insane.
And you
There's
really
no
are just in your
There's
brain.
no way. There's no way I could do that.
I feel like you can pace yourself better that way, because sometimes I have a problem with running with music.
Oh, yeah.
So then as music gets ramped up, then I start running fast, and then obviously I'm more exhausted, and then it's harder to run. Keep going. So you run without headphones.
Yeah, and I mean, like, running without headphones is one of those things that I think is super important, because when you're in a race setting, you can't wear headphones. Like, you're not allowed to for these obstacle course races.
Yeah, it's probably more dangerous.
Yeah, because you just lose focus. You can't hear when people are going by you. If there's like
instructions from the course.
Yeah, or like
especially if there's bears on the course, like somebody would.
Yeah, you probably want to focus on those. You want to know that they're coming for you. Or like I've seen people like not get out of the way when like the medical ATVs come by and they almost get like run over by them.
Oh my goodness!
So you got to watch out for cars and stuff like that.
That's irony at its finest.
Yeah, really.
I've never seen or heard of anyone getting hit by the medical ATVs, but it's almost happened a handful of times.
I could see it. I mean, you're exhausted and just running, and you're like in a weird zone. But it definitely, if you were allowed to wear earphones,
yeah,
you'd have even more.
Oh yeah, it would be.
You'd have
it would
way
be a
more
disaster.
problems, yeah.
But running without earbuds, it really just helps me because it allows me to focus on my posture, my breathing, and then I kind of have to use like that mental discipline to like make myself stronger, because like when you're running with headphones, you can distract yourself. You can just kind of like
it's a
take
crutch.
it easy. Oh yeah,
yeah.
And then when you don't have those headphones in, you really just have to focus in. You've got to like dial in. You can't get distracted. And it also helps you like kind of clear your mind, like, which is why I like to do it. Like it gets me to like, if there's a lot of things going on in my life sometimes, I like to do that and just kind of like, because you can just talk to yourself.
So that is kind of your own form of
meditation, kind of, yeah.
You talk to yourself out loud?
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's awesome. So when you're like doing practice runs, like, do you ever like run by people and they're just like, that guy is definitely talking, and there's no phone or anything?
Oh yeah, that happens a lot. I mean, I do try to control it sometimes.
Yeah.
Like when I see people, I'll like try and like say hi to them, or like I'll just try and like
internalize.
shut it off.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm just like so in the zone with the conversation I'm having with myself that like.
What kind of conversations do you have with
It's not
yourself?
just during running. He does it around the house too.
Oh no, I do all the time.
Well, I talk to myself around you guys all the time. You guys are like, what, Dan? And I'll be like, I'm just talking to me. And you're like, well, you're crazy anyway.
Well, I mean, I talk to myself about anything, like really, like anything that comes to mind, like anything that I have on my mind at the moment, I'm gonna discuss it. Like whether it's a problem that I'm having, like in my life, whether it's politics, whether it's anything. Like I just like have these discussions with myself. Like,
Do you feel like it helps to say them out loud?
oh yeah, 100%. Like it helps me to like not only like get my thoughts like more coherent, because a lot of times when you try and say something and you've never practiced it before, you sound like a lunatic.
Very true. Very true.
A lunatic. So it
Or a
helps.
Looney Tune, either
Yeah,
one.
Looney Tune.
Depending on the Looney
Yeah.
Tune, I guess.
But that's really helped me as well. And it just, I mean, just getting those things off your chest, because sometimes, for me at least, it can be hard to discuss certain things with people because it's very private. But then just vocalizing those in a way, even if you're just by yourself and just getting it out there, like I think it helps a lot.
Oh, that's cool. So that is your technique then?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That's different too. That's something I've never really thought about or heard of. You mentioned breathing. Do you have a specific way of breathing, or like of pacing yourself, or anything like that?
With pacing myself, I really just take it day to day. I just kind of listen to my body more than anything else. Like I do my running training a little bit differently than most people do. So I do have a plan per se, but I don't really ever keep to it.
So you're talking about like your running plan throughout the week?
Yeah.
Like some people will be like, I need to get 82 miles in this week.
Yeah, or like they try and set up the pace that they want to go.
Right.
I don't really do that. Like I'll set like a.
You don't run around carrying a metronome above your head?
Well, you don't.
I know, it's different.
But I'll like just go out there. If I say like, oh, I want to run 8 miles today, then if depending on how I feel, I'll do it. But sometimes I'll do more. Like I remember there was one day when I was like, oh, I'm gonna go out and run like. My schedule said I was going to run 18 miles. I was like, man, I feel so good today. So I went out and did like 35 easy miles, just like had a good time with it.
Is there such a thing as 35 easy miles?
I mean,
No.
but then there were other days though when I'm supposed to run like 25 or 24 miles, and I'll just wake up. I'm like, I'm really just not feeling like it. Like my legs just feel tired. Like I feel like that could be a bad idea if I try and do this, because like you have to listen to your body too. So like, you
But
have
I
to
feel like
change
that
your pace
might
and
be
stuff.
what sets. I feel like in any sport, that's what sets some of the really high level individuals apart from the rest of the competition, is because not everything can be just a strict programming guide or stat sheet or whatever, because the human body and human beings are just so different day to day.
Right.
Not only where they are mentally, but where they are physically, like how much rest you got, how much stress that you have in your life, some movements that you did that had nothing to do with training day to day, like all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really important as well. And that's probably one of the things that really sets you apart.
Yeah. I mean, and that's also helped with injury as well. Like, just if I feel like my body feels like crap, then I won't push it further, because I know that I already feel like crap and it's just not going to go well for me.
Is that common sense in training we're seeing? What a rarity.
Is there any time where you're like, I know I feel like crap. I know I need to get these miles in. I'm just going to do it.
I mean, that happens a lot too as well. But I've figured out now,
walking the balance.
Yeah. Well, like what I've learned is that you have to determine the difference between being injured and being hurt. If I know my body pretty well, and I know when certain discomforts are something that could lead to injury, versus if I'm just sore or if I'm feeling like a little hurt at the moment, then I know I can push through it. So trying to differentiate between the two, for me at least, has really helped me a lot.
I think that's another giant characteristic of really any volume sport. That you just hit on. Just so much of competition in sport that has to do with your body is awareness. So I think that's an excellent point. Do you do anything? What do you do about trying to recover?
Ooh, a lot of stretching. Again, like 30 minutes of stretching a day after my runs, and then mobility work as well, and then nutrition for me has been a really, really important thing. So just making
what do
sure
you do for that? Yeah.
It depends on the day. For longer races, I just eat whatever I can. Like I'm like, I don't even care.
You're just trying to stack calories.
Oh yeah. Like if I finish after the 24-hour race, I ate 2 Baconators and then I was out. I slept for 4 hours. It's right afterwards.
That's awesome.
But that day sucked though too, because I had to fly back home and I had to take an exam the next morning at 8 a.m. So I was like,
after all of that?
Oh yeah. I told my teacher, I was like, listen, I might not be able to make it. And he was like, well, if you don't make it, you're getting a 0 on the exam. And I was like, well, guess I'm going to have to fly back.
Real good guy.
Yeah, but for the...
Just try to do something super better with my life. And I'm not being lazy.
Hey, I got to be on it. That's all that matters.
Dang, very impressive.
But for nutrition,
academics is important, children.
It is. Very important. But just on a normal training day, I try and eat just relatively healthy. I pretty much follow the 80-20 rule. So 80% of my diet is super healthy, and then 20% of it I just kind of indulge myself with stuff.
Right.
I do try and make sure I don't drink any caffeine. I try and limit myself to caffeine as much as possible, just because I use caffeine so much during my races. I don't want to build up a tolerance.
Oh, that's a really
Makes
good
sense.
point. What do you do for caffeine during your races?
So I actually use...
Just pounding hot coffee?
No, that would be horrible. Oh, gosh, that would be the worst. But I actually use 2 different brands, and I'm actually sponsored by these brands.
Oh, plug your sponsors, please.
Honey Stinger and Kill Cliff are both of the brands that I use for all these things. So Honey Stinger I use for their actual physical nutrition. So these are things like waffles, bars, energy gels, goo packs, which, by the way, goo packs are disgusting, but they are so good.
So take us through what a goo pack is.
It's literally a packet of goo.
Nice.
If you can imagine,
Very self-explanatory.
I'm trying to think. You know what fudge looks like? Melted fudge.
Oh, I do know what fudge looks
Imagine
Luke Hillman over here does baker connoisseur.
Imagine that in a small package, and it tastes not the
as
best.
good.
Yes.
Dang. Oh, so what does it do for you? Is it does it have a lot of electrolytes?
High
hydrates
calories, salt content.
Well, salt's probably really important for you.
Oh
guys.
yeah, I mean, I'll do salt tablets and stuff while I'm running. So literally just pills filled with salt. Just take those on hot days and stuff. But then for my hydration, I'll use Kill Cliff. So Kill Cliff is it's a purely hydration brand. They've got stuff for pre-workout, recovery, and during workouts. Then they've also got leisure drinks as well with CBD products in them, which I actually enjoy. Those are pretty cool.
What's your favorite Kill Cliff product?
The Recovery is definitely my favorite product that they have. Just because...
What's it called? Just Recovery?
Kill Cliff Recovery,
oh,
yeah.
Sweet. Aptly named.
Yeah, simple. It rolls off the tongue.
I love it.
But I like using that just because I've used a lot of different recovery products. I've used Body Armor, I've used Gatorade, I've used Fit Aid, and that one I just think is the best. Like I just have found that one was the one that I enjoy the most in terms of flavor, and I think that the ingredients that they use are super good for you as well. And they try and limit the amount of like artificial sugars they use as well,
which is really important.
Yeah, so I try and limit myself on those artificial sugars and that bad food. Maybe like 20% of my diet is that, and then the other 80%, like a lot of vegetables. Yeah, I think for my diet, it's like 50 to 55% carbs, 25 to 30% like healthy fats, and then 15 to 20% protein.
That's interesting. What about your favorite Honey Stinger product?
Ooh, I think that their gummies, like their energy chews, are definitely my favorites. And the reason I like those the most is because I can eat those at any point.
Are they just called energy chews?
They are just called energy chews.
I love the simplicity. I'm a simple man.
They don't want to make it too complicated for everyone.
Simple kind of.
But when you're in a race, let's say first half of the race, I can eat like real whole foods, like protein bars, pizza, subs, stuff like that.
During the race?
Yeah.
So you're eating pizza during the race?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We'll just get whatever we have.
Are you still running? Or are you like, is this like during a rest period? Like
both. I'll do both.
Oh, so you run with pizza in your hand?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you just take a slice or do you have like a bunch of slices?
I'll just do a slice usually. Yeah. I mean, I've had races. Like these are for just running races.
What about choking? Don't run with food in your mouth, Adam. You're like, Mom, throwing that out the window.
Well, practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
So it's different, though, for each race. So for the obstacle course races, I do try and eat, like, if I do take a pizza or something like that, I'll take, like, a slice, or I'll try and make it smaller so that, like, I can eat it quicker, because the obstacles and stuff, when they come, you have to have your hands open. It's like origami pizza. Right, yeah. But with those kinds of races, like the obstacle course races, you have to have your hands free a lot. So trying to make sure that you can make those almost into bite-sized snacks so that you can eat them quickly, and then you can like immediately jump into an obstacle if it comes at you. Because sometimes you don't know how far or the distance between obstacles. You can guess from the maps, but overall you really just don't know.
That's another. Wait, hold on. I have so many questions. First of all, let's come back to the obstacles and like what you know before going in.
Okay.
So don't let me forget that. But the second half of the race, you said you can't do Whole Foods anymore?
Oh, no Whole Foods.
Is it a certain distance that you cut that off in, or is it like always the second half?
Every race is different. Like, it just depends. Because for me, personally, when I'm doing those long races, my mouth gets super dry. Like, I get super tired. The ability to chew becomes a struggle.
Oh, good point.
Like, when your mouth gets super dry, like, it gets really hard to swallow, like, Whole Foods and stuff. So the energy chews are like very calorie dense. They have a lot of sodium, a lot of electrolytes in them. So like, and they're very easy to digest and very easy to chew. So you just pop those bad boys in, and like I've had times where like I have been so tired,
Honey Stinger's glowing right now.
So dry that I just swallow them. Like I don't even chew them because they're like just like.
That would freak me out. I'd feel like I was just going to choke.
Pop them in.
It's like Dan died on the course, and it was not from a bear. I'd be like so disappointed.
But, like, that's just, like, stuff that, like, I don't even think about doing that. Like, there's not, like, a conscious choice that I'm making. Like, oh, I'm going to pop this in and just swallow it. It's like I'm so tired that trying to chew just turns into just me just swallowing it.
That makes sense, though.
Do you have a strategy going in? Like, I need to eat this at this time. I need to eat this at this time.
I do try and actually plan it out.
Do it when you feel it.
A little bit of both. So I do try and plan it out.
This is my wall pizza.
For like actual Whole Foods, like things like Snicker bars, pizza, subs, I plan those things out. So I'm like, okay, I know that I can eat this during this rest period, or I have this plan so that I can pick this up quickly and eat it if I'm like super hungry. But I also try and just kind of eat when I'm hungry. But I've learned for me that if I can eat about 300 calories an hour, that's usually how I can sustain myself pretty well. I try to aim for like 300 to 500 calories is pretty much what I shoot for an hour, depending on the race.
How did you come up with that?
It's just like what I've found for me has just been maybe
so just experience.
Trial and error.
Yeah, it's like I've done like less than that. It also depends on the length of the race. Like if I'm doing anything over pretty much a half marathon in terms of obstacle course racing, then I will try and keep to that every hour I'm eating the food. Every hour I'm eating this many calories. But anything under that, I don't even bring food, don't bring water. I just go out and just knock it out.
You're like, this is not long enough for me to care about. Do you have anything like, because you obviously have a lot of tactics and a lot of different things, strategies that you employ, from nutrition to the intensity at which you run, to the way that you train, to the way that you think, probably even to like gear that you wear, which is a whole different thing that we should get into as well. But is there, besides your own experience, has there been any other external influences from people that you've read about or that you've actually talked to or anything like that?
Yeah, actually. So there are a lot of people that I get influence from every day. So I know you guys know of David Goggins.
Oh, I know David Goggins.
Yeah, I get a lot of influence
Love
from
that
him.
guy.
I mean, I definitely don't have the same mentality as him. He's a little bit more aggressive than I am, but just like a lot of his ideas and stuff and like his philosophy about things, I really enjoy. Cameron Haynes.
He's such a wild man.
Oh, I don't think he's human. He's a robot.
No.
Just goes.
I remember listening to something of his. I think it might have been his own podcast or it was an interview of him. And he was like, I didn't want to run that day, and I felt terrible. But I looked in the mirror, and I said, David, stop being a bitch. And then I ran out and ran. I was like, what? And he ran some absurd amount of miles.
Yeah,
too.
I don't do that. I listen to my body a little bit more than David Goggins does. But Cameron Haynes is another guy. He's a big bow hunter and runner as well, but just the discipline that he has, I really enjoy. Amelia Boone and Ryan Adkins are both OCR athletes that I get a lot of inspiration from. Like I really enjoy like their philosophy and stuff.
Have you spoken to them?
I have never spoken to Amelia Boone. I've spoken to Ryan Atkins one time.
What was that like?
He's a Canadian, so he's the nicest guy in the world.
That's awesome.
Like he's super cool, like super chill. Like it's weird talking to him because he doesn't seem like this athlete. He just seems like a normal guy. Like you're just like, yeah, he's just some normal dude.
Right.
Which I think is the weirdest part about the OCR community is that like all these people, whether they're professional or amateurs or just getting into it, they're all just like normal people.
But I think that's part of the sport because it's so mentally challenging. I think that if you're going to do that and you're going to do it anyway, competitively or often, you are going to be humbled. And it creates it you have to be like a really humble, like kind of easygoing person to be that level.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why.
Maybe. I don't know.
That's cool. It sounds like a cool community.
Yeah, it's a very cool community. And you see people from all walks of life there. I mean, like, you'll see people who are, like, just extremely fit bodybuilders who are just huge. You'll see, like, lanky guys who, like to run. You'll just see, like, just normal. It's like, just like a normal community of people who just, like, want to go out and, like, do something challenging or want to spice up their life. And the thing that I actually like to see the most is people who, like, are getting into it because they want to be healthier. Like one of the stats that came out from Spartan Race was that since starting Spartan Race, they've gotten 2 million people to get off the couch and like join Spartan Race consistently.
That's a cool stat.
Yeah, and I was like, that's awesome because like I've always been a big advocate for just like living like a healthy lifestyle. Like I'll never tell people like, oh, you should go run 115 miles a week like me. Like I'm like,
I feel like I need to now.
Like you don't need to do that, but just like living a healthy lifestyle, trying to like be active as much as you can and eating healthy and just like trying to have like a good mental grounding as well. Like that's always been the thing that I advocate the most for, and that's why I think the OCR community is one of my favorite communities.
That makes a lot of sense. What do you like most about OCR racing? Like what do you like most about it? I obviously know how you got into the sport. What keeps you there?
Just the challenge, really. Like I feel like I really am attracted to things that are very, very challenging. And even though there are some races that aren't obviously as challenging as others, like the 3-mile race obviously isn't as challenging as the 24-hour race, but they all offer a different kind of challenge. Like I actually do better and place better at the longer races, things that are like 30 and 40 miles, than I do at things that are like 3 miles, just because I have an endurance background. So I can run at a good pace for longer.
So that's a bigger strength of yours.
Yeah. And like it's just a different kind of racing that I really am attracted to. And I think because it offers so many different distances and requires a different kind of training in order to be well-rounded, it really is attractive to me. Because with cross-country or marathon training, you're running the same distance every time. But with OCR training, you have to be like an overall like an average athlete at everything in order to really compete, which is like kind of the same philosophy as CrossFit, I guess, but just in a different aspect.
I could see that. If I was going to put one obstacle in front of you that you had to beat everybody in, which obstacle is it?
I would probably say that the sandbag carry or the bucket carry now is probably one of my strongest obstacles.
And that was one of your weaknesses before.
And just because it really depends though too. Like there are times when I can like just sprint with that bucket or sprint with that.
I have no idea what that says, Josh. Josh is holding up a note. Do you want to hand me that note real quick? Sorry, Adam.
But like just like doing those kinds of obstacles is super like.
Oh, good. So keep going. Sorry, it's reminding me of something to ask you.
But like those obstacles themselves, like there have been times when I can like sprint with it and just knock it out and just like be like super strong at it. But then there are other times where like you get to it and then you grab the bag and you look up and you're going up like looks like a 90-degree angle. So you're not. Everyone's moving about the same speed there.
So if you were going to compete with everybody else, would you want less of an incline?
I personally would want more of an incline.
Because you feel like you're more prepared for that than the average person.
I definitely have an advantage on the courses in general that have a lot more incline than the ones that are really flat.
Does that have to do with your training?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I do a lot of incline training. I try and do a lot of hills because a lot of the races that I do are very hilly.
So don't prepare for OCR by just running on a treadmill.
You can.
Right.
My personal favorite workout to do on a treadmill to prepare for an OCR is 15 minutes max incline as far as you can go. So you try and run the max distance you can in 15 minutes at, I think the treadmill goes up to like 15% incline. I think it's the highest it goes.
It depends on the treadmill.
Yeah, so we'll say 15%. So knock your treadmill up to 15% incline and just try and run as far as you can.
That would drive me insane mentally.
Oh, that is a mental challenge.
You're just like staring at a wall the whole time.
Yeah, that's actually easier, in my opinion, than running on a treadmill. Because running on a treadmill, you feel very relaxed most of the time. You can like take it at
so your mind wanders more.
Yeah. Whereas if you're at 15% incline, 30 seconds into it, your whole body is on fire. Like you are sweating profusely.
Oh, that's a good point.
Your calves and your quads are like on fire. Like you're sweating profusely. So if you want to do something and like if you want to run on a treadmill, that is always what I'll recommend because you're like, oh my gosh, like this is hurt. Like you're focused on yourself more than any other time on a treadmill when you're doing that.
I could definitely see that. If you're in a race and what's one obstacle that you see that really causes you like a big F to be in your head where you're like, I do not want to do this obstacle?
Oh, the 400-pound tire flip is definitely the thing that gives me the most trouble.
How much do you weigh?
I weigh 155 pounds.
So that's a significant difference between.
Yes.
It's not very close to 400 pounds.
No. So that definitely is a struggle for me. Just because I'm not like a huge guy. Like I've got muscle, but like I'm not like known for being able to flip 400-pound tires.
Right. You also probably don't want to carry a ton of weight on you if you're doing a lot of miles.
No.
Yeah.
So like you want to stay pretty thin.
Yeah.
So but the most I would ever want to be is like 160.
Right.
But I would never want to be like heavier than that for the kind of stuff that I do.
That makes complete sense.
But that obstacle, like, and sometimes it's hit or miss too. Like sometimes I'll get to that obstacle and I'll just knock it out. And I'm like, oh, that was easy today. And then sometimes I'll get to it and I'll literally feel like my legs are gonna fall off.
Oh, I could see that. Would you say that's the most failed obstacle?
No, not by a long shot.
What's the most failed obstacle?
The most failed obstacle is definitely at Spartan Race, and it is the spear throw. And
because of the technique?
Well, not many people throw spears very often, so no one really knows what they're doing.
They don't do the Saturday spear throwing?
No, not really.
Go out in the old backyard and just start launching projectiles everywhere?
Well, that's what I do now.
I don't believe that.
So how long ago was that, you think, Josh?
I'd say probably, it was within the year after you started doing obstacle course racing. I remember you asking your mom to get you a spear, and she's like, what?
She's got to be used to some weird requests at this point.
She gets a lot of weird fitness requests now. It's like, why do you want that? Like, why do you want a 50-pound sandbag? I'm like, I need to run with it. And she's like, I know, the question's still there. Why? Yeah. But the spear throw is definitely the most failed. But like I try in practice. When I first started Spartan races, I think I missed the spear, like that obstacle, for 2 years straight. So I never completed that obstacle for 2 years.
Did you do research on technique, or did somebody show you, or did you just start launching a spear at a target?
A little bit of all three.
Okay.
I started out just throwing it and trying to figure it out, and then my cross-country coach, he'd been doing it for a long time, and then he taught me, and then I looked up videos online, too, to look up other techniques, because everyone does it a little bit differently, like how they hold it, how they throw it. Some people throw it like sidearm, and I just don't do it that way. I'm like, how do you throw a spear
I don't even know how
sidearm?
you would do that.
It's super bizarre. Weirdest thing you'll see.
Yeah, people throw things all different ways, you know.
But and then I practice that all the time. Like I know Josh can say like I used to practice it in all types of weather as long as it was.
So you would just in your backyard.
Yeah, just out there.
So
just
neighbors can just see you just
Go look
launching
at
a
'em
spear.
outside.
This is a normal weekend. Just do that.
That's excellent.
I'll like try and do like maybe like 20 or 30 reps. I don't do it quite as much anymore because like the technique is I've kind of nailed in on my technique. I haven't missed a spear now in almost a year.
Oh wow.
So since doing racing. So my entire last season of 2019, I didn't miss one spear since I was racing then.
I see you're wearing a Spartan shirt right now.
I am.
Is there a brand of race that you get most excited about? Or is there like a couple of them where you're like, this is going to be cool? Or
It depends. Like Spartan race is definitely my favorite in terms of just like the standard distances, like 3 mile, 10 mile, and half marathon. Just because like I really like the terrain, I really like the obstacles that they set up, and I like the difficulty and the competitive aspect of it. Tough Mudder, definitely my favorites in terms of the ultra races, so like the 12-hour races, the 24-hour races. Those are the ones that I found are the most fun for that, just because.
oh yeah, the 24-hour race now. Chafing wetsuit sounded like a blast.
Yeah, the chafing
What'd you
wet
do this weekend?
I just went out and chafed a lot. Walking around was weird after that, trying to.
I believe that.
Like people have really thought that I had like gotten like there's something wrong with me. They're like, dude, are you like you good? Did someone like kick you and like
I've been around some
horseback
suspect
riding
people.
do my horseback riding? But the Tough Mudder is definitely my favorite in that aspect. Savage Race is my favorite in terms of some of the obstacles that they have. I think that some of the obstacles are just really creative.
Oh, cool.
Like they're just a little bit more strength based. Like you have to have a little bit more strength to do all those, especially in the grip department. Like they have a lot more American Ninja Warrior focused obstacles.
I'd imagine some of those, if it was a couple obstacles stacked together, would just like your people's grip must just go out.
Oh yeah, I mean it's kind of gross too because you can see people's like skin on the bar.
Just hanging there?
Yeah, it's like
sweet.
really gross, and you're like, wow, man, that's why I signed the waiver, I guess.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but they have some really cool obstacles at Savage Race. They have like this thing called the battering ram. So it's like this little pipe on like another pipe, like a bigger pipe on a smaller pipe, and you have to like shimmy it down the smaller pipe, like while hanging.
What? Wait, while hanging?
Yeah, so you're like hanging there and holding onto this pipe, and you have to like shimmy it forward.
That sounds wild
Like-
and difficult.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite obstacles.
Also
in terms
tough.
of
Like
grip.
some of these, like you think about not only in their ingenuity, but then also how did they design them? You know, because some of them have to be difficult to build. Like some of them are obviously simple, like you just make a 10-foot wall, you know, with some
grab a
grips on
tire.
it. Right.
Just
Yeah,
grab-
yeah.
just
Or you're
grab
just
one of
like,
the tires.
we're just gonna drop a tire off here because we're super creative. But some of the other ones, like that sounds like that takes some like now we have to build this thing.
Yeah.
How are we gonna do that?
Some of them are really intricate in how
Get
they
us
have to
an
build
engineer.
them. So like there's a lot of like really interesting obstacles, especially at Tough Mudder. They have like, they're very very like you're like wow, that's a feat of engineering right there.
That's so cool though. And then that must be those are things that set apart the different brands and like the different races for each one as well. If you could create an obstacle course, how long would it be? What are some of the obstacles that you would use?
Well, I would definitely make it 5 miles. So like a 5
Definitely
mile course,
5 miles. Why definitely 5 miles?
because then you could just do laps.
So you would do 5 miles laps and you would do the time thing?
Yeah. So I would do 3 different distances. I would say you could do a 5 mile race.
Yep.
You can do the 5 mile lap for 4 to 5 laps of this 5 mile lap, or you have 12 hours to do as many as you can. That would be my perfect race in terms of distances.
What about obstacles?
That's a tough one. So you always have to
All
have this.
spear throw.
No, no one would do it. Be a lot of burpees.
Right, yeah, I'm sure.
So when I think you have to have the standard obstacles. So you have to have the walls, you have to have those heavy carries, you have to have barbed wire crawls. They use real barbed wire too, so be careful.
Wait, so there's barbed wire that they put in over prisons.
Oh yeah,
Nice. And then how does that work?
you crawl under it and don't sit up too high. Don't get on your knees, stay on your stomach.
Does anybody get cut by that?
I've gotten a lot of cuts from them.
Nice.
I got some scars.
What caused the scar? Like you just were not aware of like how high you were crawling?
Just going too fast, and then
Oh, speed. I could see that.
when you move too fast, you kick your knee up a little too
Yeah.
high, and then your back gets caught in it.
Oh my goodness.
There was a professional athlete. His name was Ryan Woods, and they were doing a barbed wire crawl down a hill, and he went a little bit too crazy into it, and he literally rolled into all of it.
Oh my God.
Ow.
That takes a different.
I think he got like third at that race too.
I placed. I have permanent scarring, but that's okay. All right, so you would have the bar. Let's continue with this. Then I have some other questions. I have like 17 hours of questions, so get ready. But this is going to be like OCR, but interviewing style. Your head's going to just start to explode.
I'm ready.
after a while.
Ready. Some other obstacles. I would definitely have like American Ninja Warrior style obstacles, like swinging from rope to rope, or just like standard monkey bars.
Was it swinging the rope to rope over something? Like, are there alligators, or like at this point, I'm not surprised by anything.
Always bears
with their cubs down there, so they're super protective. Look at that little bear. Oh no!
I think it depends. It just depends on the location.
Porridge.
I personally would do it over water, so it's a motivator to not want to fall, and then it also makes the rest of the race a little bit more difficult because now your hands are wet, and then when you come across another grip obstacle, it makes it a little bit harder.
What about icy water?
Well, icy water is the worst, and I would definitely have that. Just a big dumpster filled with because they have an obstacle at Tough Mudder where it's just a giant dumpster filled with 1,000 pounds of ice. And you just have to jump into it and come out.
But coming out is probably the most important part.
Yeah. It definitely is. I think it's.
Well, he hasn't surfaced yet, so
it's not a good sign.
Chalk that one up as a loss.
But that is definitely one that I hate and love at the same time, and I think I would add that in as well.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Muscle cramps are incredible after that.
What would you say? I believe that. What would you say is the most uncomfortable obstacle? Or just discomfort is it might not be the hardest thing, but it's just the most uncomfortable.
I would
besides
say
rolling into barbed wire if you screw that up.
That's not even that bad compared to there's one. But not even one. There's maybe a handful of obstacles that are a staple of Tough Mudder, and they all involve being electrocuted.
Okay.
So those are my personal, the most most uncomfortable ones.
Yeah, it sounds horrible. Can you give me an example?
So during my 24-hour race, they had 3 of them back to back to back.
During this, so that wasn't even, you're the wall was the worst. Oh, there are these other points where they just shoot electricity into your body.
They weren't physically taxing though. They were just oh man, this kind of stinks.
Yes.
So for those obstacles, there was one where you were crawling in water underneath of barbed wire, and then dangling from the barbed wire were electrical wires. So not only were you in a very conductive environment because you're in water, you're also having to crawl under the barbed wire. So you're limited on where you can go.
So I can only imagine the meeting for this. We're I'm thinking about shocking all of our contestants. And somebody sits back and is well, we're going to need some kind of scientist to figure out how much the human body can take to cause discomfort, but not to kill them. So they must have come up with a voltage.
10,000.
And let's just do it 3
insanity.
times, not just once,
right?
Not twice. Let's do it 3 times.
The waiver process has got to be out of control.
Well, they pretty much say you could die. So just sign here if you're okay with that. And you're okay.
And you're no problem.
Oh, yeah, 100. I've read it before, and every kind of way they think you can get injured or die, they put on there.
Did they ever say anything about bears?
Yeah. They say you might get attacked by an animal. You might die from an animal. So
death by animal.
You might get run over. I'm run over? And then I saw the ATVs fly by. I'm I see it now.
It makes sense. Now because I have this note to remind Dan to ask this question. Going in, you mentioned course maps and stuff like that. How much? I know some of them you weren't even sure of the mileage, but how much of it are you aware of? Which obstacles are going to be in the race? How far it's going to be? Maybe the order of the obstacles. Do you know any of this, or in some of them do you know it, or is some famous for not telling you anything? How does that work?
So when I first started racing, you didn't know diddly squat.
So 2016 was the year of the unknown.
Oh, they would tell you there's a 4-foot wall here. They'd be there's a 4-foot wall here, but then every other obstacle was blacked out, so you don't actually know what it is. You know where it is, you just don't know what it is.
Oh, that's funny.
And you're just oh, okay. But now, since they're trying to standardize the distance because they're trying to make it an Olympic sport,
that makes sense.
They are trying to say people okay, these are the obstacles you're going to face. This is where you're going to see them. But still, the distances are they say that they're going to standardize the distance, but I don't know if I believe them because they've always had standard distances.
Right.
But every race I've ever been at is either just a little bit under or way over.
But to make it an Olympic sport like that, they would have to have something standardized and something that you could really quantify what running a race in however many hours would mean or however many laps would mean to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure you would really want it to see it become an Olympic sport.
Oh, I would love to see that.
So
I would love to see how they were going to do it, though. That's the most interesting thing.
So is a dream for you, would it be for it to become an Olympic sport and then you become an Olympic athlete?
That would be pretty cool. I gotta say,
It's pretty cool.
I'd be
That'd
pretty,
be cool to Adam.
I'd be pretty happy with
He's
that.
like, well, it would be cooler if they had more shocking pools, but with sharks in them, and then that would be cooler to me.
See, that's my only thing that I want to see about is like how they would add in those specialty obstacles, stuff like that. So like, oh, would they like add in obstacles that are like just purely fear-based, like running through electrical wires, or would they just have to do all the physically taxing obstacles?
Because then they would also have to watch out, because once you start to do that and it becomes an Olympic sport, obviously it's going to get way more press.
Yeah.
And if you have something happen to somebody that is going to scare the public, that could be good or that could be horrible for the sport. So then it's kind of it's a balance to walk.
Yeah, it's a fine line. You want to scare people, but not too much.
We want to frighten them, but not overly much. Oh, that's really cool, man. So what's your next big race?
So the rest of the season, they did announce, is pretty much canceled. So
all of 2020, is that what's the season?
2020.
So the season's a year long all the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's only two
like
weekends.
the NBA year.
There's only 2 weekends left for racing. One is in West Virginia, and then the other one is in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I think West Virginia is the second to last weekend in August, and then Pennsylvania is the first weekend in October.
What are those?
So West Virginia is a 3-race weekend. So it's a 6-mile race, a 10-mile race, and then a 13-mile race.
I just can't see how you do all the race. Like after I was done one, I'd be like, oh, I'm good for a long time. Like not just like, oh, I got another one this evening.
Yeah.
Like this.
I mean, or like they're just back to back. Like you'll finish it, and then it's like, okay, next race starts in 30 minutes.
Oh my goodness. Does that matter if so let's say you do your first race. Is it staggered? So like if you run at 12 but you don't, let's say the next race is at 4 and you run at 12, and I'm just making up times.
Right.
So you run at 12, you're done at 3. Do you start at 4 no matter what? Or if you're done at 2, you start earlier, or if you're done
Start
at
at 4 no matter what. So whatever time your start time is, you'll start then.
So the faster you are, then the more rest you get in between.
Yep.
Regardless. So are there people that are just like, that really happens where they finish the race, and then they're right into the next race?
Oh, yeah, that happens all the time.
Oh, my goodness. Or they're late to the next race.
Yeah.
Does that go against them?
If you're late to a competitive race, you're not in the
don't
competitive
place.
heat anymore.
Right.
You're just bumped down to like the regular person heat, or like the open heat.
The regular person.
Well, it's
Goes to show what you think of them.
Well, it's kind of cool because the competitive athletes and the regular, like the open heats, all do the same course.
Yeah, I guess that does make sense.
So it's super cool to see that, because like even though there are people out there that are like, oh, like I'm like first place overall, like everyone has to do what they did. So like it's just a super cool experience.
And you can see some of the athletes running too, especially in the lap races, because then they're obviously lapping you and stuff. And you're like, oh, that's Adam Lovellette right there. And they're like, oh man.
I remember doing my first ultra marathon for OCR, and it was a 30-mile race, and it took me like 15 and a half hours. So it was a long race.
I've never seen someone more tired than
I wasn't prepared for that.
You saw him
race.
after that?
Yeah, I saw him when he got home.
Yeah, it was a rough time.
I can't imagine being done with these races like in Atlanta or New York or something like that, and then having to travel back.
Oh,
soon.
that's a struggle. Having those like 4 or 5 hour drives back.
Oh my, that's almost worse than racing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's you gotta put some Red Bull in your system, and then just kind of take some Advil and pray your legs don't cramp up when you're driving.
Absolutely. So we were talking about your sponsors before. How did you become sponsored? Like, how did that whole thing start?
So once I started racing competitively and I actually started placing, so I actually started getting like those top 3 medals and those top 3 finishers, I decided, I think it might be time to like start reaching out to some people. So I reached out.
What makes you start to think that way? Do other people do that, or like?
Well, a ton of different like athletes do sponsor stuff like that, and they like talk to people and they get free gear. And I was like, I think that'd be cool if I got sponsored by a company, because I think that like I'm pretty decent. So like I think that I could like help out these companies and stuff like that. And I've always wanted to be a sponsored athlete. I always thought it was so cool.
Yeah.
So I reached out to Honey Stinger first.
What made you reach out to them?
I love their product.
That's a good reason, yeah.
So I reached out to them and I was just like, hey, like I'd like to be a part of you guys. They got back to me like maybe 5 days later and like, yeah, we'd love to like have you as a sponsor, like as an ambassador. So for an ambassadorship, it's different than a sponsorship. So an ambassadorship is like you promote the product and they give you free stuff every now and then to to test out, and you get a discount, and then you also have the ability to like buy certain products that other people aren't able to buy, but they don't like pay for your races or anything like that.
Right.
Whereas a sponsorship, they actually like pay for all of your stuff.
Oh, cool.
So but Kill Cliff, I actually am like a brand ambassador and kind of sponsored by them. So the way that I got in touch with them though was just really strange. So I wanted to be sponsored by another company, so I just sent out an email to every single company I could. I'd never heard of Kill Cliff before when I tried to get sponsored by them.
But love their stuff now.
I do love their stuff now, and that's not because I'm sponsored by them. I actually do really enjoy their stuff. I heard back from them like, yeah, we'd love to have you. And I was like, sweet. No idea what you guys are, what you guys do. So I like bought a bunch of their products and I tried it, and I was like, oh, I actually really like this, because I don't really believe in having a sponsorship in an organization that you don't like believe in or use.
Absolutely.
So I was like, I should probably like figure out if I actually like these guys.
That's
before I say
probably
yes.
pretty important.
So then I did that, and I was like, wow, this is like a really awesome product. I really like what you guys do. I like what you guys are about. So then I was like, yeah, I'd love to get on board.
What are they, from their end, do you know what they do? Do they look you up, or are they just like, I'm sure they don't just randomly.
Most people, you kind of have to reach out to them.
Right.
So since like these companies are so big, you kind of have to make sure that you're reaching out to them so that they can talk to you, and then like kind of like selling yourself. Like, oh, this is why I think you should sponsor me. This is what I do. This is the sport that I'm in. This is how I've placed. These are the platforms that I have. These are how many followers I have on Instagram.
But they must research you afterwards. They must be like, Adam Lovellette, I have heard of that name.
Yeah.
Or Adam Lovellette, I now want an autograph.
I don't know if I'm quite there yet. I'm still a little...
Soon.
Hopefully soon. That would be cool. But yeah, I think getting sponsorships really isn't too difficult once you get to a certain point, but it's all about placement. Just like once you start placing in races, like your ability to get a sponsorship
you gotta be known
immediately,
right? Because then they obviously, if they're gonna attach their product to you, the more that you're known, the more exposure they'll get.
Yeah.
So it's another who you know game, and then like how many people that you know, and how many people are aware that you do this, and how inspired they are by you as well. So that's awesome, man. I know you're only 21 years old.
I am only 21.
But do you have, I know we just spoke about like the Olympics and stuff like that, but right now, do you have any goals, maybe short-term, long-term in mind with this?
My short-term goals right now is really just to like focus on my deficiencies, like trying to get stronger. And right now my strength has definitely decreased because of COVID-19. Like a lot of my workouts have had to have been done just like at home and stuff.
Right.
And the mileage has increased a lot since I'm not like at the gym as much. So I'm running a lot more, but I'm exercising a lot less. And I was actually like maybe last week I weighed myself for the first time with Josh, and I was like 145. And I was like, wow, I need to gain some weight back.
Do you have any, when you're weight training, do you have any favorite lifts? Like lifts that you're like, I need to do this is a staple of my workout routine?
I have, so one I think that everyone should do is pull-ups. Especially because...
For the grip?
Oh, yeah.
Do you do a variety?
Yeah, I'll do a variety. I'll do, like, close grip, wide grip, stuff like chin-ups. I'll do, like just different kinds of grips. So, like, they're just trying to, like...
Do you do fat grips at all?
I do fat grips, too. Yeah,
nice.
I like fat grips. Fat grips are one of my favorite
One of my
things.
favorites, for sure.
I have small hands, so it helps a lot. It's definitely a struggle. But trying to just kind of, like... have different positions that I'm in. So like maybe like I'll have my hands on a bar that's higher and a bar that's lower, or like maybe I'll like just trying to make myself a little bit more uncomfortable with it. So this way, like, because when you're doing these obstacles, you're not like in like that perfect pull-up position ever. Like you're always in like you're rotating or you're spinning. So trying to get more comfortable with like holding your body weight up in certain different situations is like super important for me. And then squats, I think, is the most important exercise in any lift or anything at all. Like, I think that
squats... the basis of human movement.
Exactly. For me, those squats are definitely one of those things that I try to limit in terms of the weight, just because I don't want to stress my knees too much. And I know that like if I put too much weight and then I try and run like 10 or 20 miles on it, like I can definitely like injure myself. So I definitely I'm definitely more careful with squats than I am with pull-ups. Like I can do pull-ups like every 2 days, but squats I try and like maybe try and limit a little bit more. But I think it's super important that you should still do them like at least every week.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you guys have any questions for Adam here?
With going into a race, like what do you do to prepare as far as like do you look at topographical maps? Do you do anything like that to try to prepare and see what's coming up?
Oh yeah, 100%. Some race, it's definitely something that I do more with new locations, because with older locations, I've raced them before and I kind of know the terrain a little bit more. But whenever I'm doing like a new location, I always like really try and go and study the map a little bit, and especially because I want to know where those inclines are. Like where I'm just going to be running straight uphill, because if I'm running straight uphill, I need to know that, okay, I need to conserve energy before getting there, so that this way I have the energy to get to the top and then continue running downhill.
You don't see that stamina bar just dropping.
Like in Skyrim.
My stats.
But just trying to focus and like trying to make sure that like I know the terrain a little bit more, it's super important. The only it's really just about figuring out the inclines and anything else, because you can't really know the actual terrain just because you have to actually run it. But knowing the incline, knowing where the ascents are and the descents are, and then knowing where the obstacle placement is as well, it can help you kind of conserve certain like energy.
Give you an edge.
Yeah. So like if you find out
any kind of edge you can get, exactly. I'm sure is super important.
Because if you find out that you have like 6 grip strength obstacles back to back to back, you can figure out ways to like save strength and save time on those obstacles by studying like certain techniques. Because every obstacle has a technique to get through it faster or to exert less strength.
Right, because pacing would become very important.
Yeah.
Or like you said, speed.
Exactly.
If you had the energy to drum up, for sure.
What's the toughest terrain you've faced?
Oof. So I'd say that there are 2 terrains that one I love, but it's really tough, and then one I hate, and it's really easy. So the one that I love is like those goat trails and bushwhacking. Love that kind of running. Like that's my favorite type of terrain to run. But it's super
bushwhacking,
technical.
like you gotta somewhat create a trail.
Kinda. Like they have like this is where you're supposed to run, but there isn't like a trail there. So you're just running through like the bushes.
Does it help to run behind somebody? Like do you like I'm drafting you?
I actually only like running behind someone when it's super flat terrain. With a super technical terrain, it can be a little distracting watching their feet and seeing their foot placement versus like trying to focus on where you want to put yours. So I personally only like drafting people when I'm in flatter terrain.
Oh, so you do actually do that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's my other terrain, though, that I hate is like super flat, no shade terrain. I remember I did a race last summer in D.C., and it was just D.C. It's not really D.C. Right. It was like in the middle of nowhere, D.C. Like some like ATV park. But it was super flat terrain, like literally flat. Like there was nothing there. And I was like, man, this is awesome. But it was no shade, just a dirt path, and it was 118 degrees outside.
Oh my gosh. How far was it?
That was 8 hours of running. So just 8 hours straight as far as you could go. That was probably the most...
And I like the heat, but that's like different.
Oh no, I think I drank like 3 gallons of water that day. Just pouring water on me, just doing whatever I could.
Salt, pouring water all over the place.
It was rough. That was a rough day. But
that
kind of terrain I hate, because like just that flat terrain, no shade, especially in the summer, it's just brutal.
The exposure is tough, and then it's also probably like mind numbing to just do the same.
Yeah. Whereas even the technical terrain, like even if it's hot, if it's shaded, like it's still humid and muggy, but like I don't know, it's a different kind of scenery. I just like mentally, it's a little bit easier for me.
I could see that for sure. Do you have for somebody like let's say somebody's just getting into obstacle course racing, and you were going to give them some advice because they want to end up being competitive, like what would you tell them?
Just to do it. Just go out there and do it. Like, you're really not going to know what to work on and, like, what you need to focus on unless you just go out there and just practice. And then, like, just getting out there, I'd say the first one, just have fun. Just go with a group of friends.
Like, no expectations.
Yeah, just go in with no expectations at all. Because if you do that, if you try and go in and you try and, like, kill it, if you're just trying to race as hard as you can and get first place, there's a better chance you're just gonna fall out of love with it because like you had this expectation of doing really well, and then you're like, oh, I didn't really do that.
And you had a very negative experience
Yeah.
as the first one, which is not what you're looking for.
Yeah, and then do some research as well. Like look into different gear that you want to use, like look into different nutrition, look into like different strategies and ideas from people, but really just getting out there and doing it, because if you do that, you'll see like things that you need to work on, things that you like, things that you don't like, and then trying different races as well. So that's where you can see what organization you really want to focus on.
I wanted to ask you, actually, again, I could talk all day about this, but real quick, a gear, that's got to be a really important part of this, especially with some of them where you're dealing with so much exposure, whether it's a lot of heat and sun or if it's just freezing temperatures and it's cold and you're dealing with wet. Like, take me through some of the gear that you use. And I guess you have to hold these pizzas somehow. How does all this work?
So for gear, I use something called a running vest. So running vests are similar to backpacks, except instead of like having all the weight on your back, it kind of is centered in like the center of your back and on the front of your chest.
It probably doesn't like slam around.
No, doesn't at all. It like literally form fits to you. And like you can hold water and stuff in there. I think the most I've ever had in there is like 15 or 20 pounds of gear. So just like having like water, food, extra clothes, stuff like that. But that's usually only for the running races. If I'm doing an OCR race, it's really just no extra clothes.
You have extra, what kind of clothes do you put in there?
Usually just like if it's a long race, I'm going through the night, I'll pack like something for like the cold weather. Maybe a spare change of socks.
Oh, yeah,
stuff like that.
Can you imagine just running like for 24 hours in the same pair of socks?
I go through a lot of socks every year.
I believe that.
Absurd amount of socks.
Is there a certain kind of shoes that you wear?
So for just road running, I do Brooks Ghost 12. Those are the ones that I like to use.
Sounds really high grade. I know Brooks. Like, yeah, it's obviously very.
I mean, like in there, I like them. Like I've used a ton of different shoes, and like I've found that those ones are the most comfortable for me, and they haven't really given me any injuries with them.
Is there anything you look for in a shoe? Or like it must have alpha wings.
No, not really. It's just like whatever feels the most comfortable on my feet. That's usually what I usually use. One thing that I actually do like for trail running is I use the Innovates. So
yeah,
those are trail
I've had
shoes.
those before.
I like shoes when trail running that have zero cushion, just zero drop.
That's what I have.
Yeah,
these are trail running shoes.
I actually learned this really recently. Is that like they said like because I was talking to someone who works at a running store and they were like, cushion's a whole bunch of foo-ha. And
yeah.
I was like, what do you mean? He's like, imagine putting an egg in an oven mitt and then hitting it with a hammer. He's like, that's pretty much what's happening.
I love that.
He's like, yeah, it's a cushion, but it doesn't really fix much.
Right.
So I was like, oh, but I always use zero drop. Just
I could do a whole
running.
podcast on just like feet and shoes for sure. So that's right up our alley. That's cool, man. That is a lot of great information. I think that I knew probably 1% of this, maybe. At all. So, I mean, is there anything else that you want to add? You want to shout out to your sponsors again?
Yeah, if you want great nutrition for races or just snacks in general, Honey Stinger is the place to go. If you're looking for great hydration, whether it's for leisure or if you're an active individual, Kill Cliff is the way to go. And if you want to find me or talk to me, I'm on Instagram at Adam Lovellette. You're welcome to ask me any kind of questions you want. I'm always free for anything like that, and I love like any
You want to
questions.
spell your last name?
Well,
I will.
The information, please spell your last name first because I like how you
So it's my Instagram is Adam, so it's ADAM, and then it's LOVELLETTE.
You sound like such a professional.
Thank you.
We're also going to put that in the notes. So like if anybody wants to find Adam, you can just look in the notes and his Instagram tag and his information will be there as well. Probably not his personal cell phone number though.
No.
We'll save you from that.
Yeah, I mean, you can. I might not answer.
But this has been such a pleasure, man. We've learned so much in a sport that is really, really quickly growing. I think that you're an amazing advocate for the sport because for somebody that is so good at it and so mentally tough, you're such a positive guy and just well-spoken and easy to talk to and funny. And it's just
thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure having you on, my friend.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
Absolutely. Luke, you want to take us away here, my friend?
Please check us out on madlabperformance.com and give us a like and a follow on Twitter and Instagram.
Don't forget about Facebook.
And Facebook.
There's
so many of them.
And thank you once again, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of The Lab.